Thank you. All right, guys. Well, listen, I am from Cryozoom. Cryozoom is my company. We do hand shipping around the world globally. My background is an embryologist. Okay, that's what I trained in. And I started Cryozoom about 12 odd years ago. In a way, just by chance. Like, things seemed to be going wrong in the field of shipping. I was receiving samples in labs, and things seemed to be going wrong. So we decided that it might be a good idea that someone in the field is actually working to make this work better in the future for all of these patients that are spending so much and investing so much time and energy on their family planning journeys. So today, I'm going to cover international shipping, why, how safe it is, the future of it potentially, some other things going on that we can all have a think about. I'll run through these points, but I really want people to feel free to ask any questions that might be more you might have more concerns about. Okay, if I haven't covered it. So moving samples around the world. Okay, the world's become very, very small. There are many reasons why people move samples around. It can be that they need to relocate simply because they have a partner who is from another country and they're moving to that country. They may have frozen oncology samples, as we call them, prior to chemotherapy when they've had cancer treatment, and frozen those samples down and now need to use them, and they've relocated. Of course, movement for donor samples, surrogacy. These are all factors that are involved in the movement of samples, okay? Caring for the samples is our job, okay? We are looking after the dry shipper. The dry shipper itself looks after the cells, okay? Caring for the dry shipper is our main thing. We use what's called a vapor shipper. It uses liquid nitrogen to charge this central core, which it works like a freezer in a way. If you look at the back of a freezer, it's kind of refrigerated like that. That's kind of how it works, like an absorbent material, keeps it refrigerated for a period of about 2 weeks, okay? For a 2-week period, maybe 12 days, it's holding the cryogenic temperatures that look after samples, even vitrified samples, which is a more modern technique of freezing cells and embryos.
Sunil, can I ask,
yeah.
why do some samples get hand carried and some go with sensitive freight?
Okay, so it can be a personal choice, Sam. Okay, cost is also a big reason. Okay, sometimes speed as well. Okay, people need to get things moved sooner. We are, as couriers, we're a finite amount of couriers. We're not something like a freight shipment where it's going unmanned, okay? So it does happen, and I think it's really personal choice.
Right.
Okay.
Is one safer than the other in terms of safety for the embryos?
As hand couriers, as embryologists, the best practice for us is to hand carry, okay? Reason being, freight shipments get X-rayed,
right?
Okay? Although there's not a vast amount of information on the result of cells being X-rayed, the potential for DNA damage is there, okay?
Right. So can't the freight shipments avoid the X-rays? Can't they get an exemption from X-rays?
I spoke to FedEx when I started the company, okay, and I asked them about this. At that time, they told me, look, we cannot guarantee something is not X-rayed in this day and age, putting something on a plane. So ground shipments, they're going to be fine nationally, but when things are going internationally, you're going to have to assume that there's going to be a chance they're going to get X-rayed somewhere.
Yeah. I know you guys have had lots of delays during COVID, particularly at airports and with customs, and flights been cancelled. What's the impact on the embryos if you guys are delayed? Is it are they at risk of thawing out, or?
So we have, let's take a case from Australia, for example, okay? This is what we were doing. So we'd collect them in Australia, bring them to London. Cells need to go out to different places around the world. The shipper itself, as I mentioned, it holds temperature for about 12 days.
Right.
Okay? That can be recharged after, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. And in practice, that's what we end up doing all the time because we're using the shippers all the time.
So how do you top them up when they're in transit with you? Do you have to go to IVF clinics on the way to top them up, is it?
No, we're able to get to a base point. So from Australia to London, let's say it's, not that it's 3 days to get there, but, if we make stops or whatever, and after 3 days, we know that we've got that safety limit of, up to 10 days if we need to. But in practice, it's every few days. But as soon as I get to London, for example, we would be filling the shipper up, so we know that 2-week clock starts again.
Right. And do cryo shippers offer insurance for these shipments or not?
Look, there are more insurance options available these days, okay? I personally, in our company, we don't, it's not something we offer as standard. We try to look into it where we can. We're very secure in our validation methods for our dry shippers, okay? So we validate the tanks by weight and by temperature. So we know that after 10 days without filling a tank, that it's going to be holding the right temperature. So if we have to go up to 10 days, we know that we're safe. So that's validated monthly, as well as any disinfection protocol as well.
I think a lot of people don't understand that you're actually carrying embryos for lots of different couples in one tank. How do you make sure you're putting the right embryos to the right destination clinic? How are they labelled?
Well, look, that's, I guess, for a big part of it, that's where my embryology experience comes in, okay? So when a clinic is witnessing, or when a clinic is sending samples, okay, there's usually a triple identification step on the straws or the vials, okay? This means that 3 identifiers are there for every patient, and that's the same, they put them in with the 3 identifiers. It's double witnessed by 2 embryologists. The same happens on the other end when they come out of our tank. But in the middle, when we are involved in having to delegate them out, I learned that technique in the lab, and that's what we do as well to make sure. Right. There's sufficient labeling to know that this patient is going to this clinic, and it's not something we have to be.
So I know some of your trips, it might take a week before you do the delivery. Yeah. But you can top up in between, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That safety margin, we're comfortable with it, but for everyone's peace of mind, we want everyone to be as stress-free as possible, ourselves included.
Yeah, yeah. What about eggs? Do people ship eggs?
Do we ship eggs?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
So eggs are, as you probably know, eggs are a lot more sensitive to temperature variations, but within the cryo shipper, the dry shipper, these temperatures are absolutely fine to hold those eggs for, up to the 10 days. So it's not something we have to worry about, completely safe. Mistakes in terms of damage to material, they tend to happen more, if any time really, okay? They tend to happen more once when the cells might be going in or coming out of the tank. Okay, once they're in there, the tank's validated, you have trust in the tank, the temperature's secure. There's nothing that can change. It's nothing that's going to affect the cells in there, unless you mishandle the shipper, you drop it or something like that. Which
right.
I mean, we have protocols in place that's not going to happen.
Right, right. What about the costs? What should people budget for shipping? I mean, I know a lot of clients here in the UK might want to ship somewhere like to Georgia or Canada. What are they looking at for costs?
So, as a very general statement, I would say that it was actually an embryologist in Australia that told me this, and the phrase stuck with me. It's for a shipment out to a destination country, think about the cost of a business class ticket to that destination. That figure, that approximate figure, will cover everything we need to do as a total. Okay, there are variations. Last year, as you know, there was, with the pandemic, we ended up paying ridiculous amounts of money for a one-way ticket to Australia.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we were able to cost share those cases out between patients, so everyone pays a fair amount and so on.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Look, what about the Ukraine issue? I know you've been over to Ukraine quite recently, to the border, to rescue a lot of families from there.
Yeah.
And you're in touch with some of the Ukraine clinics. What's happening there in terms of where their embryos are going?
Right. So the latest information is that many of the clinics that many of you may have heard of in the Ukraine, they have moved material out. First, they were out in bunkers, actually, and shelters to avoid any bombing and these kind of threats. And then they slowly kind of made their way west to Lviv and across the borders to Slovakia, Moldova, and Poland.
Right. So have some of the big clinics done that?
Some of the big clinics have done that. There's been a lot of operations for them to get material out. And I think it's continuing. I mean, that's going to be very important for, all the embryos, we moved last year, for example, to Kiev. It's a huge amount.
I know IVMed's relocated. What about places like Adonis and...
Adonis, I understand, also have gone, some have gone out to Poland, and the majority, I think, to Slovakia.
Right, and Biotexcom, have you heard about theirs?
I haven't.
No. Yeah. Okay. I mean, once these embryos have moved to other countries, what can intending parents do with them? Can they ship them somewhere else if they want to?
Look, they should be able to. Okay, there might be some legal issues that we'll have to face, or the clinics will have to face rather, when it comes to shipping. Ukraine, it's not difficult, but there's a process involved in moving materials out, legal processes with the Ministry of Health. Okay, I don't know what kind of emergency arrangements were made, if any, to move them out at this time. But if I'm assuming they are in place, they've gone into an EU country. Moving from the EU, certainly around the EU, is going to be straightforward. To move them into non-EU countries, depending on where they are, that legislation can be difficult to get them out to non-EU countries.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Have you had indications that some of those clinics are ready to release the embryos now, or will that take some time, do you think?
There's a lot of patients wanting to do that, but in terms of clinics, we haven't had any direct information about this yet. I can imagine it's going to come all at once.
Yeah.
In many ways, yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask about the shipping thing? Dino?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that word.
Sorry. Your point about the X-ray?
Yes.
So if I understand correctly, once the container is X-rayed, the embryos are destroyed. And also from what you said, it is possible, very unlikely, but it's possible the embryos shipped by air could be X-rayed. Is that correct?
This was the part about freight shipment. Okay, so if we offer a hand carry service. So in hand carry, we bypass X-rays completely. Okay, so this is set up with the airport so that the dry shipper itself it goes through a different screening process. It's not subjected to any X-rays and therefore the cells as well. Okay, so freight shipments potentially are. I can't really speak for them, but the hand carry service. It's X-ray free.
The sensitive freight people we work with do have a process to avoid X-ray, but you've got to go with the right company. You can't go with FedEx, as Sunil was saying, but there are specialist sensitive freight companies that will have a process to exclude them from X-rays, but you've got to know who you're dealing with there. We have got a few providers who'll do it. Yep. Okay. Sunil, what are the main concerns that patients have with you? I mean, I know this is really hard for them, putting trust in someone to take embryos for them. What do they tend to worry about?
For the most part, it tends to be, you know, unless they're of a scientific background, they might not have the right understanding of how these cells are being moved, okay? They're obviously thinking, look, these are my embryos, they're absolutely precious, or whether it's sperm or eggs also. How can these tiny, fragile little things be moved, you know, halfway across the world? We tried to get the message across that, look, this is how it's done, okay? They're at the right temperature for this amount of time. They will get to the destination within that time. Therefore, they will be, you know, they're not going to be compromised in any way. But it's that understanding. It's like we do spend a lot of time talking to the patients so they can get a feel for who we are as well.
Yeah.
And try to build the trust that way. And I enjoy that, and I think it's very important for them.
Yeah.
As well.
That's great.
I would want the same if I was doing it. Yeah.
Sure. All right, look, thank you so much. We run out of time,
Okay.
but thanks a heap. That's really, really useful.
All right,
If you guys
my
have
pleasure.
got questions for Sunil, he'll be around, I think, for the next few hours if you want to
absolutely.
talk to him more. We've now got, as a final session before lunch, in that room there on the legal issues for people doing surrogacy or egg donation with Karen Holden, just over there. Thanks a heap. That's great.
Cheers.